So try to keep track of the visuals in this presentation because I think they'll really help best understand this offensive set. I've also played around with them a little bit to hopefully make it a little bit more intuitive, but I'm also going to do my best job to explain them as well. So the main goal of this offense is to maximize the amount of open continuation shots without getting the disc trapped on a sideline, by giving the defense enough time to set, or by getting a disc out into the weak space. So you really want to keep the disc in the strong space or the recovery space. So to start here, we have a basic set. The disc is starting with this dark blue offender denoted as A. So I'm just going to call them offender A. Then here we off offender B, which is in a slightly lighter green. They are the primary cutter in this scenario, and the offender C is lightest green, and they're the secondary cutter. So in this triangle offense, there's always going to be obviously an active thrower, the person with the disc, a primary cutter, and a secondary cutter. The primary cutter is going to be looking to receive the continuation. The thrower is obviously going to be throwing a shot or throwing a reset. And the secondary cutter is always going to be looking to clear to the side of the field where the next continuation will be available. The main essentially rotation, the main rhythm of this offense is to always be moving into the direction opposite of the disc. So, and what that means is basically if the disc is traveling clockwise around the court, you want to be cutting counterclockwise away from it. If the disc is traveling counterclockwise, then you want to be cutting clockwise around the court. And this will be a little bit more clear after we go through the scenario here. So A starts with the disc. They take a shot, corner shot. B cuts into this space and catches the disc. C is also keeping track of this. They see that this shot is open and being taken. And they are cutting into this space to make this next shot available as an available option. So this shot is made. Regardless of whether it's hit, B now has the disc. They catch the disc. They are immediately turning and looking this way because chances are if this shot was just taken, if it was open, a defender is now blocking the stake. So this is probably no longer going to be an available option. So B recognizes that and they turn and look to this spot. And C has since they recognize this shot was open early and B was about to have the disc, they cut into this space and now this shot is now open. So B can freely take this shot to this stake. Important to note here that A recognizes that this stake is now blocked. They're useless on this side of the field. So what they're going to do is clear into this space. And hopefully, assuming they're all coordinated, they now know that C is about to get this disc in this lower right region, and they can potentially set up another corner shot in this region. So this shot is then taken. C catches the disc. And luckily enough, player A was coordinated enough. They are now the primary cutter. C is the thrower, and B is the secondary cutter. A cuts into this space. Now C isn't comfortable taking this shot because this is a long shot to make. They are almost near the weak space. And if this shot is missed, which it's likely since it's such a long shot, it's probably the disc may end up in this weak space. And especially if these first two shots were not hit and the stall is high, this is not good for the offense because the offense will get the disc out here on a stall 8 or 9 potentially. So C instead decides to throw the disc into this strong space instead of take a shot for the stake, because resetting this disc into the strong space creates two options. First, A obviously can read the disc. They are cutting into this space. So A will have plenty of time to react. Even if they're already here, they'll have plenty of time to react and catch this disc in the strong space. Also, the strong space is a lot easier to hit from here than this stake is because the stake is small and the strong space is quite large. And what resetting the disc here does is A now creates these two easy shot opportunities. And if the stall is high, it creates the easiest option on the field to reset it to the center, essentially to throw a bailout. So you don't necessarily always want to be taking a shot in this rotation. You may want to be looking for a reset. A reset can also be taken into the other direction if the rotation switches, which I will talking about next. So say C then resets the disc to A. Now A has the disc, B is the primary cutter, C is the secondary cutter. This is essentially how we started off. This is a similar rotation. So C, each player is now back into their original position. However, a defender comes down and blocks this stake, so A cannot take this shot, right? And A doesn't really want to reset it, right? Because A is already in the strong space. So what is A going to do? They pump fake B. B recognizes that and stops. And C, the secondary cutter, who was clearing out into this space, is now also recognizing the fact that A just pump faked. What happens now is essentially the rotation switches. So now B goes out. They clear the space. They now are the secondary cutter because they were pump faked. Essentially, this shot was not taken. And C is now the primary cutter, and they cut back into this space to receive this potential corner shot. So pump fakes are important. This helps change the rotation of the triangle offense. So originally the disc was traveling clockwise, right? And the cutters were traveling counterclockwise. Now this pump fake essentially switches the rotation. So now the disc is traveling clockwise around the court, and the cutters switch directions and are now traveling clockwise around the court. So you can always essentially reset. You can travel in either direction. It doesn't matter as long as all the cutters and the thrower are on the same page. And so similarly, if we go a couple slides back, instead of if this shot were blocked, this long reset, C could pump fake this, and B, instead of clearing out to this space, they could come back, and C could take this reset into this strong space, and then clear out into this direction. So both reset options are available. Essentially, you're going to either have this rightmost strong space or leftmost strong space to look towards and activate either cutter. So that's the basics of how this triangle offense looks like, how the rotations work. Just a couple of final tips on this. As a shooter, as a person with, as a thrower, essentially, you only want to be considering three options. The first option is you want to be looking to take a reasonable shot if you have the disc, obviously. If there's an open shot and it's not too far and it doesn't look and it has decent recoverability, then just take the shot, obviously. That's pretty straightforward. If you don't have a reasonable shot, if it's either blocked or your spacing is poor, then you want to look to reset it to the strong space. And we looked at a couple examples of that. And if you're already in the strong space and the defense is completely covering any kind of options, then your best option is just to bail out to the center, especially if you're in the strong space, because you have the easiest recentering shot from there. And a note about bailouts is that they should only ever occur from the strong space. If you ever get to a high stall count, you should not be thinking about taking corner shots. You should just be looking to reset it to the strong space, because that's the easiest part of the field on the outer offense, to bail out to the center. If you try to bail out from either the recovery space or the weak space, it's just a harder shot to hit, and there's nothing stopping you from just doing a small dish pass into the strong space and taking the bailout from there. Just make that job as easy as possible. As a cutter, there's three things you also want to be looking for. The first thing is to receive a continuation. So we talked about that. If you're the primary cutter, that's almost your main job. If there's a shot taken, you want to be looking to receive that continuation. The second thing you want to be looking for is to set up a reset. If, for example, the disc is in the weak space, and the thrower needs help, that's the second thing you want to be looking to do, is just setting up a reset into the strong space. And the last thing you want is clearing space. You don't ever really want to be stationary. You always will want to keeping track of the disc. So if you are, especially if you're the secondary cutter, you want to be looking across the court and seeing what the primary cutter and the thrower are doing, and then managing your space that way. So, and a note on that, again, as I mentioned, you always want to cut into the opposite direction of the way that the disc is traveling. So the disc is going clockwise, you want to be cutting counterclockwise. If the disc is traveling counterclockwise, you want to be cutting clockwise. So I didn't really touch on resets too much in this video, and I'll talk about that in the next video.